This is Pat with the Colorado Gerontological Society, and this is part one of a three-part series that I'm going to do on resident rights and bring your head back into the game. Resident rights are back on the front table, and COVID is on the side table now. So hopefully you've got that all settled. If you need help, pick up the phone. But we're going to concentrate on 3 shorts to bring resident rights and make sure that you're meeting all the criteria. It doesn't matter how residents pay you. It matters how your business is set up and how you deal with issues. So it's important that we understand some things that I want to bring back your awareness, okay? And so the states and the feds have been working since 2015 on resident rights in many, many levels of housing and assisted livings and nursing homes, doctors' offices, CMS. I've been engaged in quite a bit of those different conversations since then. And we're going to concentrate today on how to, in our industry, what are some of the impacts. So I wanted to remind you that when people do not have enough money to pay privately, we do have a waiver in Colorado, and we're on what we call a 1915C. And it's a specific waiver that we negotiate, and we're actually in the middle of some revisions right now called the elderly, blind, and disabled. And it encompasses anybody over 18 that is disabled, but not disabled in the regular disability world, but in a traditional disability world. A lot of that is cardiac disease, lung disease, cancer, that type of thing. And then the mental health waiver is the one that I work in the most, and that is to help our people with chronically mental health issues. That is also an evolution going on, and part of what you've heard on the news is all of the work to treat meth and fentanyl users, alcoholism, some other, like crack, that type of thing that has actually made a comeback. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that evolves. And we're in a major rewrite in our state on how we're going to deal with mental health. We're 48th in the country, which blows me out of the water, because back in my early days of practicing in the community, we were one of the top 5. All right. We have a brand new program. It's called the HCBS BuyIn for working older adults. I'm just starting to figure this thing out because I couldn't for the life of me figure out the application process, how you even trigger an HCBS for working adults without the automatic information system knocking them right straight out. So I don't have the answer yet. I haven't successfully done one of these, so I feel confident, but I've got several on my desk to work through in September and see if I can get people on this program. Most of my work will be in the behavioral health market, not so much in the community market for personal care. I'm going to work on the MI side and see what are the factors, what are the things we need to do to be successful on that. So down the line, I'll have a training when I understand it better. Okay. So back in 2015, like I said, we got tasked to do a better job, and that came from a lawsuit by the disability community called the Olmstead Act. And so back in 2015, we worked really hard. There was a huge group of people across the state working on this, and we met monthly. And then we had some subgroups, and I belonged to one subgroup, and we met weekly for 10 weeks to work on a program that literally got put on a shelf. I'm hoping we have the money to take it off the shelf, because it will improve the communication between the single entry points and the people that want to use this program. So the bottom line is that the rule is that everybody has access to community living. And I don't care whether you're private pay, Medicaid paid, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that that everybody has equal opportunity. And so that's kind of where we're going as a country right now, is what does equal opportunity mean? So this transitional plan, this realigning your arms around it, is again, just to bring you back up to speed and get this more of your focus than COVID, okay? So the plan that really impacts you is called a person-centered plan. I like to call it a service plan instead of a care plan. Care plan implies medical intervention, where a service plan means what can we do collectively together? It's called collective impact to make your life have some meaning. And what do you want to do on a day-to-day basis besides sleep and watch TV? And this is where we are moving back to and getting more substance, so to speak. So the care plan is driven by the individual. We are a support system. We are not the parent. We're not the mother, the dad, the aunt and uncle. We are a partner. This is very difficult in our industry for a lot of people. We give them information. So like one of the resident engagement things is what's out there in the community to do that's safe for you to go to, that's interest you, and that you can afford with your budget. And so we have to find those things and we have to get that information out. That is our collective impact responsibility. Where are they occurring? Where are the events going on at? Do we have cultural competency things that are really important to some people, such as the Dragon Festival for the Chinese over at Sloan's Lake, or we have the Multicultural Festival in Aurora, which is well attended, and many different cultures bring food and activities and dress and culture, customs from their culture and their communities. It's really pretty a lot of fun. And I've learned, let me try that again. It's been a lot of fun to learn about these cultures and to get to know them better, besides my very small window that I grew up in, which was extremely Italian and a very small part of Denver, and was never exposed to the rest of Denver or the possibilities growing up. Okay. Another part of this planning is what you have heard in the world called the new grievance form. So complaint forms are old school, throw them away, and you want to use the state built grievance form, which I have if you don't, and then write a policy, which I've drafted a rough policy that you can adapt to your facility. And basically all of this is all communication. What are we doing to improve the quality of life of the person that lives in your facility so they seem more engaged and more a part of the community instead of a rock or an albatross? And a lot of people that live in assisted livings, or a lot of the people that are unhoused that are living on the streets, don't feel like they're part of anything. So this brings another term up called community integration. So residents have a schedule. They can come and go at will. You're not their parent. You can't say that visitors are only from 8 to 8, or that you have to be in the house by 10. This is their home. And so you're not going to get any support in that attitude. What you do have to do is figure out how to be safe in your neighborhood, especially with the crime rate and the chaos that's going on out there. Okay. You want to make sure that activities are age appropriate and that the resident wants to participate in them. And so that can take some work. Okay. You need to make sure all of your staff have a current person-centered care training program. There are some federal ones. I have one that I have developed that is available to you as a member of CGS, but you've got to do some person-centered training. A lot of what we're talking about today is on this concept. And then you got to make sure that your residents have a copy of their rights in their room. I prefer a notebook or a sleeve on the back door, that they get them on admission and sign for them. That's called attestation. And that you do every resident meeting, the ombudsman or yourself, make sure that you point out the resident rights where they're posted. And if anybody has a question about a resident right or a resident responsibility, such as not losing your key to your room, that you and the ombudsman work together to talk about this. And the big thing that I really want to drive home, you are not a parent, therefore you cannot restrict rights. So you're going to get a lot smarter, and that's part of the work I've been working on for the last few months, is how do we smartly admit people into our home? How do we make sure that behaviors are addressed before they become an issue? And how do we work through this when we do have an issue? Because things are going to change heavily this fall, and it's going to be very difficult to just take people and then deal with them as they are. We're going to probably get more and more picky about who we are willing to serve. Okay. So here's some federal rules and that are important. And I'm just going to hit a few of these key things. Is that your home that you're renting out a space to the resident, that they have full access to the common areas, they have full access to the outdoor areas. If you are a smoking facility, that you're very clear what that looks like, following federal, state, and local rules, and that the resident is very clear and what their responsibilities are. So I know one thing that drives people nuts is the residents throwing their cigarette butts as defiance. I call that the new quiet defiance. And you work through these things. Sometimes you just got to talk it out. Okay. Transportation is another big issue. Transportation's gone up and it's gone down. We have it and we don't have it. The state and the feds are paying for it for a while. And under the EBD HCBS waiver, you can build in medical and non-medical transportation. The person and you need to work with their case manager to make sure that they have that allotment. It is a limited, it's not an unlimited ride, and they can't pile 20 people in a car. It is for them and them only, or if they have a caregiver going with them. So they have to understand the rules of engagement, okay? They can ride a bus, they can take an Uber, a taxi, they can walk, they can ride these little scootery things, bicycles, whatever they're capable of doing. If they are medically disabled and they need curb to curb, not door to door, but curb to curb transportation, Access-a-Ride is an option. So they pick them up at the curb, they deliver them to the curb. They're wheelchair and walker friendly, and they have a test thingy that you have to do at their main office to get your Access-a-Ride card. I believe it's $5 a ride each way. I also believe if you're in the Denver area that there is some funds through Dr. Cog to offset those $5 charges. Medical rides, there is no cost. Those are built into the HCBS. They actually bill HCBS. And so there's a lot of different medical transportation companies in the metro area and the Front Range area. It's a lot harder in the rural area or the small towns. Another term that I want you to be aware of, and I see this cited in plans of corrections frequently, is called protective oversight. So being an administrator is a big job these days. It has a lot of responsibility. But the big umbrella, when you open it up, think of the top of the umbrella where that little knob is that holds all the fabric together. And that little knob is protective oversight. And the handle you hold on is everything that comes under that umbrella that you're responsible to, because you're holding the handle. And that's the best way that I could describe protective oversight. So protective oversight in the world of Medicaid is driven by the single entry point. Protective oversight for the private pay market is based on your service agreement and then your facility and how you manage things in your facility and the services you offer. But they have to be parallel. You cannot treat one population different than another population. Another term that I want to bring awareness back to you is called a rep payee. This is specific to two areas of financial responsibility. One is with Social Security, and the other one is in some banking organizations like Wells Fargo or Chase, where they have a specific form, they have a specific protocol, and it's only for that specific agency to be a rep payee. Social Security is really tightening the noose on rep payees. There's a ton of reporting. And I will not take that role anymore with people because I don't have the time to do all the paperwork that goes with it and all the financial oversight. So rep payees, there's a couple of agencies in the state that do this. They do charge a fee, and a lot of families get talked into doing this. And so again, more paperwork, more responsibility, and then you also have to have a credit check and be sure that your credit is sound, that you cannot be on the CAPS report to be a rep payee. So like I said, they've upped the game, upped the ante because there was so much fraud in the rep payee world. All right, security. If you have cameras in your house, shut the darn things off. You're only allowed to have cameras at your front door, back door, and garage, and in your QMAP medication cart or QMAP area where medications could have diversion. Those are acceptable. Been using Ring as one of the vendors. There's a couple others out there that I've looked at that are hooked to a phone that you can turn on and turn off at will. And the reason that I like the front door with ring is when somebody rings it, it tells you who's at the door. And so those are acceptable, and they try to block us, but we won because these are norms in neighborhoods, and they can't do anything that's not that a neighborhood can't do. They can't block it. So if you have people that are high risk for elopement, you were not you're able to use wander guard watches anymore. They said it was a violation of resident rights. It would take a court order. So we got guardianships and got court orders. Then they had to back off. What we're trying to do is come somewhere in the middle. And with the new Apple watches and the new Samsung watches, they're GPS built in so that it's not on all the time. But if a resident gets lost, they can ring the house and their GPS will come on their phone and we can figure out where they are. And that has worked a few times recently. And so they're not really an elopement because they just got lost in the process. So they're early dementia, but not late dementia. And so the whole memory care world is changing, and what that's going to look like and what a secured memory care world is going to look like. So those of you that are brave enough to work in that area and deal with all the additional regulations that are coming your way, we have opened up an ALR circle for all of the memory care administrators to come together so we can work together and build an idea or build a voice of how we're going to cope in the future. Okay. So some things that have happened recently is residents were locked in their rooms, and there was no staff on at night. Those facilities have been closed. There was no egress. So if you had a fire, people couldn't leave. We had a couple of facilities like that. Every resident has to have a key to their room or a code to their room if they can remember them. And they can't be those little dinky key codes that you can't see the numbers. They have to be the large print ones. So if you're using a key code, it has to be able to be changed. And remember that it's resident control, not you, okay? And then normal fences. So again, you can't put in fencing that is meant to keep people from going out in the community, and you have to have the fire safety bars so people can exit in case there is a fire. So it's important that you work very closely with your fire department on the fencing in your community, and then also the egress gates and how you put those fire safety bars on. All right, signage. Signage is also going away, and this comes from the HOA world. They don't want a lot of signs in their communities. And so having a great big yard sign is not going to work anymore. But having, like if you, on my house, like I have Cook residence placard on my house, you could do that and be just fine as long as it's tasteful. So it has to fit in with the look of the other homes or buildings in the neighborhood, and it cannot identify the residents as individuals with disability. So you may want to look at your current signage and figure out if you are meeting that criteria. All right, part 2, I want to talk a little bit about privacy and dignity. So remember, we have 0 restraint policies, no cameras inside, and be very careful with social media. Just last night, a new employee to a facility posted all kinds of pictures of the residents. And so I'm going to be calling the administrator this morning to see that they have photo releases, because again, that is a violation of resident rights and telling people where they are. So we have to be, my opinion is a 0 social media policy with staff. And I know I've got 18 grandkids, and I can tell you they're on their phone and social media platforms constantly. And I do not know why their employers put up with it and why that is acceptable in their job markets that they all work in. So you need to be very clear about your social media policy. You also need to make sure you're knocking on the door unless you expect an emergency. And so that is a part of this whole privacy, dignity, and respect conversations. All your rooms must have a locked storage valuable center. So whether it's a drawer, a cabinet, a closet, it is important, and no longer is it acceptable for people's belongings to be stolen or to be absconded by staff. I know that I have a good friend whose mother's wedding ring was taken by a staff person and then pawned, and luckily the pawn shop put it into the police department in there when they took it. And so luckily we filed a police report and then was able to get it back. So, we try not to have really big valuables, but some people, certain things are super important to them and we need to protect them. Discharges. So Eileen, myself, and other people, we worked on Senate Bill 22-154 from January until the governor signed it. We were down to the last hour where he was hoping he was going to veto it. It's one of the most degrading bills I've ever seen written in Colorado. And the people that wrote it, their hearts were in the right place, but they didn't understand the unintended consequences, nor did they care, a couple of them. And so we have to make adjustments. So one of them, and again, I'll be doing some more shorts, is how do you cope with Senate Bill 22-154 so you're not tossing residents out? And that's exactly the language that's in the bill. And so throw residents out, which was very deplorable to me. And so we're going to have to deal with behavioral discharges and figure out in the rule changes that are coming up how that is going to look. And we've got some ideas around that. Private rooms is a national discussion. There is some money down at HCBS to do a study to do private rooms. I plan to I want to look at that closer and try to find out who's going to be the project manager on that. And I want to have some ideas because if we're going to do private rooms in residential communities, we're not going to make enough money to keep these homes open or to meet some of the regulatory criteria. So I'm trying to figure this thing out and how is this going to look. The other thing, in our residential communities, we don't have the new ventilation requirements of FGIs. So anybody getting a new license has to put in a ventilation system into their HVAC. And so I'm just in a brand new licensure thing, and we'll be looking at what the cost of that's going to look like, and I'll have better information to figure that out in the future. As I said, make sure that your bathrooms are ability to be locked. Residents have the right to privacy. They should not have to worry about somebody coming in while they're going to the bathroom or sharing. And all FGIs is they are okay with Jack and Jill bathrooms. They're not okay with community bathrooms so much. Uniforms cannot be demanded. Residents have to agree to it, and they have to agree to it on a quarterly basis. We are fine with scrubs. Actually, it seems with COVID, polio, monkeypox, flu, norovirus, West Nile, C. diff, all of that stuff. Scrub seems to be an okay thing. And some people like to wear, different tops and then just wear the bottoms. As long as you don't put your company name on them without the residents' approval, that is where it's going to get kind of touchy. And then make sure people are wearing closed-toe shoes when they're working in the facility. All right. You cannot label doors, drawers, how you put pictures on people's rooms to help remind them where they live. It has to be tasteful. And that's the big thing. They're looking for the tasteful concept and not the big red arrow that this is a disabled community. Dining. I think this is probably one of our better things that we do. So this is a whole list of stuff that the department will be reviewing on your next survey, and making sure that you're meeting all of these. And again, it doesn't matter how you're paid. These are regulations in Chapter 7 that will be scrutinized carefully, okay? All right, so make sure you're getting resident input. So building menus, what are the main dishes? Would they like to try something else? Are they sick of something? Would they like to have a barbecue, or would they like to have a party, or would they like to have breakfast at night once a month? Whatever your group wants to do, it's all about them. It's not about you, but you can control the budget, and you can be very straight and say, this is the budget we have for this meal. And so we have to stay in budget. And, they're usually, most residents are pretty clear about that. We did have a situation here recently where a bunch of staff brought in food. They were going to do this big potluck, and the whole facility went down with norovirus. So remember, all food brought in has to come from a licensed vendor, a bakery, a restaurant, even the food trucks have to be licensed. And I love the food truck concepts. So, you might want to do that once a quarter. It's a nice break for everybody. And then if you are doing meals, like you make too many portions and you want to have those extra meals that if a resident doesn't like what's on the menu, they can see what's in the freezer and warm that up. Make sure that they're marked, they're good for 7 days. There are some homeless shelters that are taking those meals after 7 days and distributing them to their communities, and that is perfectly fine as far as I know at this point. All right, so communication. All of this list is important that you maintain dignity and privacy and not yell out in the middle of the room, so-and-so, you got an Amazon package. I've seen that happen, okay? All right, so some considerations. One of the rules in the new FGIs is you have to have front loading machines for the disabled communities and with any elders that need them. I personally do not like front loading machines. So, I don't know what will happen in a few years, how that's going to work. But you may need to do some training and documentation. Residents can cook. And even in our commercial kitchens, that's where they can't cook because of some other regulations. We have to figure out if a resident wants to cook, where that's going to be. You must make sure that you're doing your ADAs and that your house is set up. And then make sure that, we deal with this visitor thing in a kind manner. So you do, in the Medicaid HCBS rules, residents are supposed to be able to have a visitor overnight if that is not even feasible or appropriate. And so overnight visitation, maybe they can go to that person's house and not at your house. You can also not ask staff or families to be a babysitter, the quote unquote role. They can come and participate, help take care of mom and dad, but they're not responsible for mom and dad. So you got to be very careful with your whole visitor and volunteer, and keep your ears open for the conversations that are going to happen when the PHO is lifted in October. All right, some modifications, okay? Try to stay out of the middle of these things. They're not fun. Your pre-admission assessments are super essential. I encourage you to use vetted national forms. I have the majority of them that you need. Glad to give them to you and teach you how to use them, okay? Be very careful with house rules. Your house rules should be very limited. I've knocked it down to about 3 or 4. The big one is your be kind and respectful to each other. The second one is no smoking in the premises, and all smoking must be done in the designated area, and no marijuana or street drugs acceptable. And again, the behavioral health market is really being hit with meth. And so I don't even understand how these people have the money to get it when, they can't, cigarettes are, I understand, $10 a pack. So it's pretty challenging right now. We are not the court, so we can't do a rights restrictions. Families cannot do a rights restriction. The court can do a rights restriction. The courts are being very protective of not doing rights restrictions. So had a situation, again, family came in, they got a blanket guardianship. They did not attend the guardianship classes. And now they talked the court out of it, was beyond me. And so they were going to put this restriction, that restriction, this restriction, and mother was going to have a bath, whether she wanted it or not, every day, and she was going to have her hair done every Wednesday. And so I wrote a letter to the court and said, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but this is what's happening, and you need to rein this in. And the court called the family in for a meeting. So again, just when you think you got something working really well, something else comes and gets in the way. Okay. So grievance procedure, again, is very spelled out in Chapter 7. So remember your Control F, go look at it. You need a simple English policy. Remember that your residents should have a copy along with their rights and house rules on the back of their door or in their notebook, and that you have attestation to the training, so they can't go to the surveyor or ask them, and they say, I don't know, they never trained me. You can say, sure, they did, and these attended all these meetings, and they have these tools at their room, and they have a signature of receipt. So that is you got to do this, guys. You just really have to take this road. Okay. All right, so I'll be recording the next session, possibly tomorrow, if not next week, and we will get it out, and it'll be on our YouTube channel. And then I've got another one after that, and then I have several more on the drawing board that I'm working on, and I'm going to try these shorts to put in our system so you can access them and look at them. I would really appreciate some feedback. Either call me or email me, or put it on our website if these are helpful. If you have questions about them, if you need more additional information, remember, it's just pick up the phone and call. I'm glad to help you look at more in depth in any area. This was intended to get you thinking again and to catch up your facility and make sure that you're meeting all these criteria. So thanks for coming today. And there's my email, phone number, and then the state website if you want to see the official FAQs. But remember, these rules are for everybody. It does not matter how they pay you. So have a wonderful day. Thanks, Lena, for